It was December 2025, and I saw a single statistic that stopped me in my tracks. S&P 500 up 17%, unemployment at historic lows, consumer confidence rising. But here's the kicker. The top 10% of Americans now account for nearly 50% of all consumer spending. Let that sink in. While the economy is booming, half of it is controlled by just 10% of the people. If you're not in that 10%, you're locked out of the real economy, the one that matters. What does this mean for you? Stick around because this is where it gets wild. But here's the part nobody's saying out loud. The economy isn't what you think it is. So how did we get here? The big question isn't why GDP is growing while you don't feel it in your pocket. It's who is actually benefiting from that growth. When experts say the economy is strong, they mean the rich are still buying luxury cars and expensive vacations. But you're working harder, but not moving forward. This is what economists call a K-shaped economy. One arm going up, those are the rich, and the other arm plummeting. Those are you and me struggling to stay afloat. You see it yet? We're not living in the same economy anymore. In fact, we're living in 3 different economies. The question is, who's controlling it, and why are we left behind? And is anyone actually in control of this game? But before we go further, let me hit you with a number that shows this isn't just theory. The bottom 50% of Americans own just 2.5% of the nation's wealth. That's not a typo. While you're working hard, you're only holding a small sliver of the economic pie. Imagine this. If America's wealth were a 100-meter sprint, you and millions of others have only made it 2.5 meters. Meanwhile, the wealthiest 1% have crossed the finish line and are already on their 3rd lap. This isn't just some isolated event. It's the direct result of an economy that doesn't measure your reality. It measures theirs. But here's the kicker. The recovery you hear about, the so-called strong economy, it's not for you, it's for them. And if you think things will get better, think again. This isn't about a few rich individuals getting richer. It's about a widening gap, a growing divide that's threatening to destabilize the whole system. Look back at history and you'll see that this kind of inequality doesn't just stick around. It leads to big systemic problems. And the worst part? This isn't a temporary blip. This is the new normal, and it's getting worse. We're seeing the normalization of something that shouldn't be normal at all. And here's the worst part. It's all by design. The system is built to keep this going, to keep the wealthy in power, while the rest of us keep working harder for less. So, you might be asking, is anyone really doing anything about this? And the answer is yes, just not in a way that's helping you. Take RealPage, for example. It's a software company that provides rent pricing algorithms to landlords. Sounds harmless, right? But here's the twist. RealPage doesn't just help landlords set prices, it coordinates them. Landlords, who are supposed to be competing, are feeding data into the same algorithm that tells them to raise prices together. Here's the shocking part. When landlords adopted this system, their rent prices skyrocketed by 25% in less than a year. Not because the apartments got better, not because the neighborhoods improved, but because an algorithm told them it was okay. And when the government stepped in, what happened? RealPage didn't pay a dime in damages. No admission of wrongdoing. They just agreed to tweak some policies going forward. That's it. The damage is done. But this story doesn't end here. At the same time, other problems are stacking up. Did you know that 40% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency without borrowing money or selling something? That's a staggering number. What's happening here isn't an isolated event. It's the result of a broken system. You see, when your paycheck isn't enough to live on, you turn to debt. And debt becomes your lifeline. You might think this is just a personal responsibility issue. It's not. It's structural. The system is designed this way. And as long as we keep letting it operate unchecked, it will continue trapping people in cycles of debt and financial instability. So what happens if this continues? The pressure will only build until it bursts. But what does all this mean for you, for everyday people? You've heard the statistics, but it's the real-world impact that hits hardest. 40% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency without going into debt. This isn't a number on a chart. These are families, workers, gig drivers, teachers, and nurses struggling to make ends meet. When an unexpected expense hits, like a car repair or a medical bill, it's a crisis, not an inconvenience. And when it gets bad enough, where do they turn? Credit cards, payday loans, and buy now, pay later schemes, each with interest rates that trap them in an endless cycle. If this sounds familiar to you or to someone you know, share your story in the comments, because this isn't just an economic problem, it's a human one. But let's step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about individual struggles. This is about a system that's designed to perpetuate inequality. How does it work? It works by exploiting fear and ignorance. People are afraid of what's to come, so they keep working, keep struggling, and keep falling behind. Meanwhile, those in power maintain the status quo, knowing that as long as the masses don't understand the system, they can keep exploiting it for their gain. The financial crises, the bubbles, the bailouts, they're not accidents. They're by design, and they benefit those who have the resources to manipulate the system. The money the Fed prints doesn't trickle down. It flows to Wall Street first, inflating asset prices and making the rich even richer. The rest of us, we get inflation, higher costs, and a shrinking paycheck. So what happens next? There are two possible paths forward. One is that we continue down this road with the rich getting richer and the rest of us stuck in a cycle of debt and instability. When the wealthy pull back, when their real estate portfolios crash, it's the rest of us who suffer. Or there's another path. We wake up, we recognize this system for what it is, and we demand change. We start understanding how the game is rigged, and we start fighting back against it. But the question is, which path will we choose? Right now, it's unclear, but one thing's for sure. If nothing changes, the divide will only grow deeper, and the consequences will be dire. So after everything, you might ask, is there any hope? And the answer is yes, but only if we start to recognize the system for what it really is. All of this, all the inequality, all the manipulation, isn't some random occurrence. It's the result of a system that was designed for the few, not the many. The key is understanding. The more we understand how the system works, the harder it is for it to keep functioning as it does. The system thrives on ignorance and confusion. If you learned something today, share this, not just for the algorithm, but because these systems survive on our lack of understanding. The more people see behind the curtain, the more difficult it becomes to keep it closed. Don't let them keep this hidden. Share, follow, and let's keep uncovering the truth.